In Europe today, a representative of the Libyan rebel movement is saying that they want Gaddafi alive. They don't want him killed. They want him alive. They want him in the dock to be tried for war crimes.
Right.
And this representative also says they don't want any foreign troops in the country.
That's right. Well, the first Security Council resolution, 1970, calls for Mr. Gaddafi to be brought to the International Criminal Court. That is the first time the United States has ever supported such a call. But the unintended consequence of that is that it gives Gaddafi no real incentive to step down. We say he should stop being president, but he knows that he's going to be hauled off to the ICC as soon as he does so. So it gives an unintended incentive for him to stay and fight till the end, because he has no future ahead of him outside of Libya.
So the early stages, Secretary of State Clinton was one of a number of people, including the military command of the U.S., who said, no, we don't want to do a no-fly zone. It's not going to work. So at a certain point, when enough people believed that, instead of saying, okay, then we're going to say no to the U.S. position, we're going to say no as the U.S. position in the United Nations, we're going to reject the British-French proposal for a no-fly zone. Instead, they said, let's make it more than a no-fly zone. We'll do much more. We'll do airstrikes. We'll do naval strikes. Then we can support it. So the actual language of the replacement resolution, which was, of course, then drafted by the U.S., not by the British and the French, called for all necessary measures. The only restriction, and it's one that is really in language and not in action, says there will be no foreign occupation force. But as we all know from Iraq and Afghanistan, you can have an awful lot of troops on the ground fighting in another country and not have it be acknowledged as an occupation.
Good to have you with us. So there's violence raging elsewhere in the region, for example, in Bahrain, in Yemen. Why is Libya getting all the attention?
Well, Libya is getting attention because America supports the monarchy in Bahrain, supports President Saleh in Yemen, but does not support Gaddafi. And it's very ironic because around 2003, Gaddafi established rapprochement with Washington. Relations were fine. He had meetings with U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Clinton, who expressed very warm regards for Gaddafi, basically deceiving him, because what's going on now was planned many months in advance. A military engagement like America undertakes does not just happen. It isn't planned a week or 2 weeks in advance. This was planned months in advance. There are logistics, there are targets to pick out, there are troop deployments, and there's the massaging of public opinion in America, preparing the U.S. public for America again to go at war illegally. This is naked aggression against another country. But the American people have to be convinced that it's humanitarian intervention.
So
the same idea.
If I could just jump in, you don't think that this is an organic outgrowth of the other uprisings that are going on in the Middle East region? You think this is something that the United States has planned for months?
Absolutely. This has nothing to do with the other uprisings. The other uprisings are very legitimate. Egypt, Yemen, the Bahrainians, Jordanians, Algerians. You hear very little about this in the U.S. media, but Libya is all over the media. It has been for weeks. Libya, Gaddafi is targeted for removal, so he's the bad guy. I'm not a pro-Gaddafi supporter, but he's the designated bad guy. There are lots of bad guys in the region, but the ones that are Washington favorites get no criticism in the U.S. media. There's virtually no reporting about them. So Saleh in Yemen can murder civilians. I just killed dozens a day or so ago. The same thing going on in Bahrain. Saudi troops coming in, murdering civilians, occupying the country. It's barely noticed in the West. No outrage from Obama, no outrage from Hillary Clinton. But Gaddafi, who did not instigate the violence in Libya, he responded to it. He responded to U.S. Special Forces, CIA agents, British SAS forces going into Libya weeks, maybe months in advance, enlisting support, arming them, funding them, and setting them off violently against the Gaddafi forces. That is called an insurrection. No responsible leader could not respond to an insurrection. If that happened in America, if it happened in Russia, the government in either country or both absolutely would respond forcefully as it should. Gaddafi did that.
Now, the Arab League has now said that the campaign in Libya has gone beyond what they backed. Do you think the multinational forces review their operations, taking that into account?
Well, I saw the Arab League statement. In fact, I've got a Reuters report on my desktop that I had just before we went on air. I honestly take that as a hollow statement because the Arab League wholeheartedly endorsed quote-unquote humanitarian intervention against Libya, knowing full well there is nothing whatsoever planned or intended. There's no humanitarian intervention going on. This is naked aggression. They know it. What do they expect when America goes in, any sort of intervention? What do they expect? No attack, nothing whatsoever. They knew this was coming. They endorsed it. And now they're complaining about civilian casualties. And any sort of hostile intervention automatically brings with it civilian casualties. There have been at least dozens. I don't think they've discovered all the ones that have happened. 2 hospitals.
Well, there are 2 takes. One is to take everything on face value, that the United States and its European allies are in this to protect the civilians and establish a no-fly zone. But we, given the history of the United States and its European allies, have every reason to doubt that this indeed is the agenda. What has happened is, and for this difficulty, Muammar Gaddafi himself is the principal culprit, a peaceful, by and large peaceful revolutionary uprising in North Africa that has come to conclusion, perfect conclusion, a peaceful conclusion in Tunisia and Egypt, has been bloodied. And what we are witnessing today in the aftermath of this military operation by US and its European allies is a further bloodying of a peaceful revolutionary uprising. In other words, what Muammar Gaddafi has done, the last and lasting contribution of Muammar Gaddafi to this revolutionary uprising, is to give the United States and the European allies a military foothold in the revolutionary uprising in North Africa. I see the events in Libya, the military operation on the 8th anniversary of US-led invasion of Iraq, in tandem with Secretary of State Clinton telling, in effect, the Egyptians that you had a peaceful revolution because of your military, and your military is our military, and then going to Tunisia to tell the Tunisians that she's there to help them. In other words, what the US and its European allies are doing are trying to use and abuse the criminal atrocities of Gaddafi to get a foothold, diplomatic and military foothold, in the peaceful revolutionary uprising that we are witnessing in North Africa.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, "No." He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, He said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran.